Welcome to the Science of Fiction HFY Galaxy Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from HFY Galaxy Tales. Where humanity always finds a way. The unexpected Cade's boots sank slightly into the soft, purple soil of Planet Zero's as he stepped off the shuttle. It was a beautiful planet, peaceful, quiet, and filled with alien wonders. This wasn't the kind of place a soldier usually found himself. But his mission was clear: survey the area, report back, and leave. Simple, no complications. At least, that's what he thought as he walked through the lush fields toward the grand palace in the distance. Something in the air felt different. It was too quiet. There were no sounds of the usual alien wildlife. No voices, just silence, stretching out across the land like a heavy blanket. The palace was magnificent, shining with golden walls and large, ornate windows that glittered in the soft light of two suns. But as Cade approached, he noticed something strange. The gates were open, and there was no one standing guard. He hesitated for a moment, his instincts telling him something was off. He entered the palace alone, his hand instinctively resting on the weapon at his side. Inside, the halls were grand, but the air felt heavy with tension. Then he saw her. A woman knelt at the foot of the grand staircase, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders like a curtain of night. Her skin was a soft shade of green, glowing faintly in the dim light, and her eyes bright, pleading, locked onto his immediately. Beside her was a young girl, no more than 5 or 6 years old, with similar features, though her eyes were wide with innocent curiosity. The woman, no. The alien princess rose to her feet slowly, her face filled with desperation. She wasn't alone in her fear. Her daughter's soft whimpers only added to the urgency in the air. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "Take me as your concubine. Protect my daughter. If you don't, we will both die." Cade blinked, unsure if he'd heard her correctly. Concubine? Was she out of her mind? This wasn't the reason he had come to Zero's. He wasn't a prince or someone who could provide protection in that way. "I don't," Cade started, but she interrupted him, her voice rising in desperation. "You don't understand," she said, her voice sharp with panic. "My people, my planet, are under attack. We are being hunted by the Korth, an empire that knows no mercy. My people have forgotten their alliances, and now we are alone. We need your help. I need your help. Take me as your concubine. I know, it's not much, but it is all I can offer." Cade stared at her, still processing the words. She was asking for protection, yes, but it was more than that. She was offering herself and her daughter as a price, a strange, uncomfortable price. "You've got to be kidding me," Cade muttered to himself, but he couldn't walk away. Something in the woman's eyes, the desperation, the fear for her daughter, stopped him from turning his back. He didn't know why. He wasn't supposed to care. He wasn't here for this. He was here to report back, to complete his mission, and leave. Simple, but as the silence stretched between them, Cade realized he was trapped not by force, but by the weight of the princess's plea. "I can't promise you that," Cade said slowly, his mind racing for a solution. "But I can try to help you. I can try to protect you both. Just tell me what's going on." The princess stepped forward, her face softening slightly. "I am Princess Solara of Zero's. This is my daughter, Lyra. My people are being wiped out by the Korth, and we are the last of our kind. The Korth came without warning, destroying everything. My husband died in the first wave of the attack. Now, the Korth are coming for us." She looked at him, her eyes pleading once again. "Please, you're human. You have strength, and you have resources. You are our only hope." Cade took a deep breath, glancing at the young girl beside the princess. Her eyes were full of hope that he could save them, that he could make a difference. He wasn't sure he could, but there was something in his chest that told him he couldn't leave. Not now. Not with the fear in their eyes. "All right," Cade said, "I'll help you. I don't know how, but I'll help." The princess's face softened with gratitude. "Thank you. I will never forget this." Cade didn't know what he was getting into, but he knew one thing for sure: his mission had just changed. And whatever happened next, he wouldn't be able to walk away. A soldier's decision. Cade stood by the window in the princess's private quarters, staring out at the stars in the night sky. He couldn't believe he was here on a foreign planet, about to make decisions that would affect the fate of an entire world. Princess Solara had left him alone to think, but the silence of the palace only made things worse. He had come here for a simple mission, His job was to survey, to report, and to leave. But now, he was tangled in something far more complicated than he ever expected. He turned back to the room, his eyes falling on the small girl, Lyra, who was sitting on a velvet cushion, playing quietly with a glowing stone. The innocence in her eyes reminded him of the little girls back home. Children should be safe, should be free to play and dream, not caught in the middle of war. Cade walked over to her, crouching down to her level. "Hey there," he said gently. Lyra looked up at him, her big, curious eyes shining. She smiled and held out the glowing stone to him. "You're going to help us, right?" she asked in a soft voice. Cade hesitated. How could he explain the complexity of the situation to her? How could he make a child understand that he wasn't sure if he could help her and her mother at all? But her trust in him was so pure, so untainted by the weight of the world. "I'm going to try my best," Cade said, his voice steady despite the storm of doubt in his mind. He reached out and gently took the stone from her hands. It glowed even brighter in his palm. Lyra smiled, satisfied with his answer. Cade stood up and walked over to the door, his mind racing. Solara's plea echoed in his head. "Take me as your concubine, protect my daughter." The words didn't sit well with him. It was a desperate bargain, a strange offer, but she had made it because she felt there was no other choice. He couldn't blame her for that, but Cade wasn't a king. He wasn't a man with wealth or power, he was a soldier. He had fought on many worlds, seen many battles, but he wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't prepared to be the protector of an entire planet, let alone an alien princess and her child. His mind shifted to the larger question. What could he do? Cade wasn't a diplomat. He didn't have the resources to fight an entire empire on his own. But he had skills, and he had a reputation. Perhaps he could use that. Maybe he could gather some support, find allies. The Kortha Empire that was threatening Zero's head to have enemies, too. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Solara entered the room, her face calm but her eyes betraying the strain she was under. She had been through so much already, and now, she was looking at him, hoping that he could save her people. Cade didn't want to lie to her. He couldn't promise her everything. He couldn't promise that he would be able to protect her and Lyra forever, but he could try. He could give it everything he had. "I'll help you," Cade said, meeting her gaze. "But I need you to understand that this isn't going to be easy. We're not going to be able to take on the Korth alone." Solara nodded, as if she had already known this truth. "I know," she said softly. "But I trust you. You're the first hope I've had in a long time." Cade sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "All right. First, we need to reach out to the other planets, other races. The Korth have powerful enemies, they can't be the only ones." Solara's eyes lit up. "Yes, you're right. We must rebuild the alliances we lost. But how do we begin?" Cade looked at the princess and her daughter, both of them looking to him for guidance, for hope. He wasn't sure what the next step would be, but one thing was certain, he couldn't walk away. He had already made a choice, and there was no turning back. "I'll need a ship," Cade said, "and a crew. We need to go to the outer systems, find anyone who will help us. The Korth won't be able to ignore us forever." Solara stepped forward, determination in her eyes. "Then we will fight together." Cade nodded. This wasn't the mission he had signed up for. It was bigger than that. But as he looked at the princess and her daughter, he knew one thing, he wasn't alone in this. And together, they might just stand a chance. Asterisk. A new alliance, asterisk. The days that followed were filled with plans, strategy, and tension. Cade and Princess Solara spent hours working together, gathering information, and trying to find a way to reach the outer systems. Zero's was beautiful, but it was also broken, its people scattered, its power fading. The Korth were closing in, and time was running out. Solara, though strong, had a quiet sadness in her eyes. She knew the truth. She knew that saving Zero's wouldn't be easy, but it was all she had left. Her daughter, Lyra, remained by her side, her wide eyes always watching, absorbing every moment of their conversation. It was hard to tell if the little girl understood the gravity of the situation, but she seemed to trust Cade completely. Cade, on the other hand, was a soldier, not a diplomat. He had seen countless battles, but this wasn't like any mission he'd faced before. He wasn't fighting for a paycheck or orders from a higher command. He was fighting for the future of an alien world and for the lives of a princess and her child. After several days of planning, they finally decided to leave the palace. Solara had managed to secure a small, hidden ship that could carry them off-world without detection. It was old, but functional, and it would be enough to get them to the outer systems where they could find allies willing to join their cause. As they boarded the ship, Cade felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. He had made a choice to help Solara, but what if he couldn't deliver? What if they failed and the Korth wiped them all out? The thought gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside. There was no time for doubt. They had to move forward. The ship lifted, off silently from the surface of Zeros, the planet below fading into the distance. Cade stood at the controls, his hands steady, while Solara sat beside him, looking out the window. Lyra was asleep in the back of the small cabin, her head resting on a cushion, blissfully unaware of the danger they were about to face. "We'll need to contact the Zerkothians first," Cade said, breaking the silence. "They owe a debt, and they've been looking for a way to settle it. If we can get them on our side, we'll have a better chance." Solara nodded. "The Zerkothians are fierce. They don't trust easily, but if they see our cause is just, they'll join us." As the ship entered the vastness of space, the stars stretched out before them. Cade could feel the tension in the air, but there was something else, too, something he hadn't expected. Hope. Solara was right. They had a chance, but only if they could find the allies they needed. Hours passed, and the ship hummed along, through the stars. Cade kept his eyes on the controls, but his mind raced with plans, possibilities, and fears. The Zerkothians were only the first step. There were others. They needed to reach other races that had been wronged by the Korth. If they could form a coalition, they might stand a chance. As they neared the outer systems, the first sign of hope appeared. A transmission pinged through their communication system. It was a secure line from the Zerkothians. Cade's hand hovered over the button to answer, but he hesitated for a moment. This was the moment that would determine everything. If the Zerkothians refused to help, all of their efforts would be for nothing. He took a deep breath and pressed the button. The screen flickered to life, and a Zerkothian officer appeared. His green-skinned face was stern, but there was a glint of curiosity in his eyes. "I am Captain Zorith of the Zerkothian fleet," the officer said, his voice low and steady. "I understand you seek our help. What is it you want?" Cade wasted no time. "We need your strength to fight the Korth. We have a plan to rebuild alliances, to stop them from taking over worlds like Zeros. You owe them a debt, and now it's time to settle it." The officer's eyes narrowed. "And why should we help you, human? What makes you think we can trust you?" Cade glanced over at Solara, who nodded at him. She trusted him. He had to believe in that trust, too. "Because," Cade said firmly, "we all have something to lose. But together, we have a chance to stop the Korth and save countless lives. Will you help us?" For a long moment, there was silence. Then, the Zerkothian officer leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "We will consider your offer, human," he said. "But be warned, the Korth will not take kindly to our betrayal." "I'm counting on that," Cade replied. Transmission ended, and Cade exhaled slowly. They had made their first move. Now, the real battle would begin.